Let me remind all of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation or the altruistic motivation that is developing aspiration, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should all engage in this teaching. Allow me to read about a page from this, the great treatise on the stages of path enlightenment we call Lamrim Chemo, volume number 3 in your English translation, to give you the blessing of oral transmission.
Masabeta Rava Bashi Bamu Yumin Barduno, Trubala Trava in She, so Niveshimilin, young Katy, Ricky, do Terra Diva shows or she within humanity did the music. Here did the machine and it is a Hela Motabani, they were counted Ricky, Peter, Motion, don't she tell of a pair that we shot on the video. Yellow division do try do, but no number change. Yellow join the rich, we were about to receive to Savani, Liverpool, so about so the Sean, do the Tarashino. Can't get Tara was there, so the Jen do be Daniel La de near do one person do butter do it easy. Popolo so about the new in the machine in Bomoto, and yet she do Tara was heavy. Renew she just out there, the share about do try young Tara to Barashe 写吧农业地下面没些的都地这让不写吧写农给出去我这写吧农们这马里巴这马这吧写经，他你的到的吧他这边没见写吧因农种这里呢看这个给到的吧能就路看些通到吧没吧地呢。我们那就故事这个写没吧，刚也把的你我们电视这边的可能我没写吧，可能没吧，有的写写吧少。因为看到我其他的嘛，能这个看同当把它没把的我们把能就工作的呢。要么是嘛，他给讲啊，电视这边听用说马些吧，可能的今天了这边学能那边今天边学的，中国这边写的录的。他们忙一把我写开吧，能这个我说写送别对吧？对了，别知道他们忙一边大别。兄弟下面说，但是都用没些东西，变这么来叫我其他的嘛，其他的嘛我打。让给对吧？能这个这些对他的我开了，我这没人说些，没人说些对下面开没让我送说。他其实群众提来就看见，我这可是天有我他让几你的这个。大约过都知道的，他这聊的咋来呢？通常把两百没谁的，人家个这个的，现在天说个那让心没让我没事个，零点些了说不知道个，两百没就让心就让心就是，那呢，他天没对不开始凶是呢，零点些个他讲说，安心马住啊，变成碰见没起了说不知道呢。那我都吃不多，但让生意吃不能够没，两百吃不能够没事个吧？是的，那天叫个，那可是让我吃那样子，那天出现意思，那所以就是他这个，旁边人家一嘛，都是不是娱乐出现没？下次去在了吧？没得的，但都对完了，但的，可是0.1呢，这种碰见没去到那。马主希望对吧？但现在没提高过，但现在吧0.7吨对个对吧？现在吧7吨没对个对吧？阿里提高就现在这个电子现在嘛就批的什么的，就是这张，那可是啊，我把里呀，那所希望他们的什么，对啊，那他主张嘛，西个几万对个对吧？我的出租的了，你对的人现在那个就所的他们都我看这是那你下面。别上，但是我全部可是人他们谈这么多呢，你前面是也去错，你这前人这里你往不说，你这刚刚错不了是，你前面是对我是吧？但现在为什么你前面是的要嘛的是吧？但我这碰不到这，我这给通过那样这个开了吧，这个是吧？所以没生意要嘛是吧？现在个有的看的行为的，他没对是吧？现在为什么你听到的这个？when the soul that is the only number the yena tipike du chami sa the only migin number mares karsen dige na ya di sem de de phagja de pa se de in titu nango re siwa ta pen ta ngan de ba lo hyu ja de pi lo hyu dang pi pho ro wa de dang de de pa chen yo ro wa de yi pi kar na so na sem ki pi phagja se do je dang ho ya je mo de chi chiro ma de min du se da rob chi na o de sem de se wo ro wa 다 링데지데 다다 디 시동 되지데 도데바 지바데 지동 되바 가가 지바 마디 시동 되다 지바라 와 어디 되발라다 어두시다 가자 치료 속 대통 시작다시 히바데 인다 니데 딩이드 선지거리 히바트기 유인도데 가가선 히바기지 참모시 인티기지 왕보사 인 윤샤지 디데 히바티게 가르사 니마지기 히바스다 가지 히바스다 가지 히바 유인 보샤야요 와 어디 계지 드마스도 샤그레스 어때서 그러와 단 다면도 이제 라다 페샤다요 다 로드 나와도 티샤고제다 계지 뭐사는 용고로 봐 계지 뭐사는 계지 사리아 샤고제 애니 나와시 로시 들 용고로 봐 근데 초등도 독세 인스 됐어 그러와 자 따도 제는 인가게 도도 그러와 다 대교가 들여 봐 지고 말해서 그게 지대 그게 통야 다가는 인데 가도 다가는 상주를 뭐 이제 그 자와도 가서 그가 제주 쇼 말해서 그러와 변다 동시에다 변나 세진에서 라비나 세진 용기 세는 다가는 그게 리지 용기 세야 다가는 명도 없다가 다가는 고시고 뭐 이제 리지 가르래도 거래도 라바 강바 가르 셈 가르 리지 지지 쇼고 말했어. 그래요? 다가는 이제 타이에도 리지 용기 쓰고 뭐지 리지 거도 강바도 이제 시고 말했어. 시도 다가는 샤고 그랬어. 그래요? 다 로지 미제 되게 딱동 지고 그랬어. 다 때스 망다서 다
How do you
였대.
say it again? So Geshe read from page 171 a little bit over to 172, about a page from volume number 3 of this great Lamrim Chemo. Now we have been discussing different positions and arguments made by Prasangika Madhyamikans, Savatandika Madhyamikans, and Chidamartins on the mind-only school. Okay, with regard to what we call realities. Okay, and according to Prasangika Madhyamikans, we call Tenjurwa. The way phenomena appear to us, our perceptions, and the way they actually exist are not the same. There is a gap or disparity between, because things appear to us as truly existing objectively, but in reality they don't exist in that way. Are you with me so far, right? And so from that point of view, according to Prasangika Madhyamikans, our ordinary perceptions, we as ordinary people, are what we call mistaken perceptions. Okay, because there is a disparity between the appearance and the way things actually exist. Only the wisdom of transcendental beings or the Aryas in the state of meditative equipoise emptiness is the unmistaken state of mind. Okay? Other than that, our ordinary perceptions are mistaken perceptions. So that's Prasangika Madhyamikan's position or the viewpoint. Okay. Now, Savatandika Madhyamikans and schools below, they make different assertions. According to Baba Viveka, they accept that things exist from their own side. They do not accept true existence, but they do accept things exist objectively or in and of themselves. Okay? And so other schools below that, they accept the same thing. And so that means, things appear to us as existing from their side, and that's how they actually exist. There is no disparity. So from their point of view, our perceptions are not mistaken, in relation to that. And so they accept what is called externally existent objects. The Tibetan term is chidan. Okay, externally existent objects. So that's the same as the Savatandika Madhyamikan's position, the same as Sautantika's position, the followers of the sutras, if you will. So going by their position, what they're saying is that when we look at a pot or a vase, okay, a vase is an aggregation of many partless particles. So their position is that there are such things as partless particles. When many of them come together, assemble together in the form of a mass, then it could come in the form of a visible form such as a vase. Okay, and so that's how the vase exists. Okay. So that kind of a vase can generate, if you will, eye consciousness or perception, visual consciousness apprehending a vase. Now you can apply the same thing to any other visible objects. And because of so many partless sound particles come together, then there is this big mass of sound, and then that generates our auditory consciousness of the perception. Okay, so that is their position of the theory. So they accept what we call externally existent objects. Okay. Now the Chidamartins have issue with them. They said, no, because Chidamartins don't accept externally existent objects. Okay. And so Chitta Maharaj say, no, that's not possible. We do not agree with your position that through the aggregation of partless particles, right, then there could be a waves or there could be sound that is perceived either by visual consciousness or auditory consciousness. That is not possible. Why? According to Chitta Maharaj's position, there are no external objects, externally existing objects, because their theory is that we carry what is called the predispositions or the latencies in our mind, and these latencies project out, and it looks like things exist substantially over there, but they are not. They are the mental projections. They are the projections of our mental imprints, if you will. And the example Geshe has given is, let's say, if you're going to kind of use a torch, switch on a torch, right? And the light goes there, but then we see the light. It looks like the light, is over there, but it isn't. We, switch the light from our side, so we see the light back. So the Chitta Martins, the mindfulness school, say no. Everything is a mental projection. Really, things don't substantially and externally exist. These are just mere projections of our mental imprints or dispositions. Okay, and so now the issue here is, Sevatandika Madhyamikan schools and the schools below, they accept objectively existent reality. Okay, things exist from their own side. So therefore, they said things should be findable. Okay, and so if you say, hey, what is a vase or a pot? They say, you know what, a vase is that thing, which is a collection or aggregation of many partless particles. It exists. You can find it. Okay, and that's their position. And the same thing with the consciousness. What we say, what is the consciousness? Well, consciousness is a collection of many moments of consciousness. You say when many, this like a minute, moments of perceptions come together, then they form a particular kind of consciousness, a particular sensory consciousness, and that should be findable according to their position. Now, Prasangika Madhyamikans said no, that is not acceptable, because Prasangika Madhyamika says nothing exists from its own side. There are no such thing as what we call partless particles, coming together and forming all these different things you are talking about. And in order to assert the conventional realities, Prasangika Madhyamika says we don't have to apply analysis. We accept that things exist just like the world accepts that things exist. And if you talk about a person called Leijin, that's the classic name we use in our debate. So it could be, Mary or John, okay? And so we all know who is Mary, who is John. So we say, hey, there is Mary coming or John coming. That's all there is to it, and we all accept that. We don't have to apply, what do you mean Mary? Which one? Mary's hair or the nose or the eyes or the ears and the nose and tongue and all that? Nobody applies like that, A person says, we don't have to do this. And so that's not acceptable. So now you see the different philosophical positions, these major schools make, Prasangika Madhyamikans, Sevatandika Madhyamikans, and the Chitta Martins, and then they discuss these different issues. Okay.
Lobu LinkedIn jela sobe ne tetsam ji thong da choba minjuro wa shewa yin se rangwon da choba dirwa ta xian yang sa di ta tenju wa da rang yibun de wa xian yang men zhao da du xian me xia de xia de wa xian yang sem za be du cha da re wa an yi yu ma yin di men na xi xie wa da tu ma de wa ta yu ma yin di ze me be xi da yin na wa xian do xie ma we lian du sta de ge ji sem za be ya LinkedIn je ge ne di qi dong di ji da tenju ge xiego de tenju du cha me xiego ma ba ta LinkedIn ji du cha me xiego ba so du cha me xia de this is what ga他们买没钱没钱，是我的事。可是他，不能啥都这些，那差一钱呢，我谁呢？刚才那老谁没这么被拉着啊？这不抢嘛的呗？我这那他们买嘛时候，他要的时候，那个就，他要的时候是吧？多的我是个样，错钱没钱，他第二类的什么个是呢？领导的他们没钱没钱，可是看大家嘛，大家所看这些呢，他都呢对钱没透过这是吧？我这都他的第三年呀，启动用户是吧？多的话都这没几块的。我这是对吧？那他现在呗，你看那的对钱没上边上边安些原因是个多，这个嘛的是，对查着的那 onhi nang marwas onhi yushi marwas
No,
so lingde onhi jimgen shigorwa
no,
ta di sakba rakba de ne migyen mare ti zes me we sherse ta ni go dwa
no,
zes ya de ze de tire ta de rangja te be zes ya de kono tukdo bige 딱도 제니 코너 랑자 타와들 랑자 TV 제요사 그래서 강사 랑자 TV 제요사 저 말에 어디 강사 랑자 TV 제요 메르 미지 지사 제요 여러 봐 시바 있는 제요 비차다 세운장 받다 두간거 제요 비차로 봐 제가 속 라바 벤 범바로 녹도 어디 있는 그 제요 말어 왔어 인티 어시 미게 태그 말어 스타니 그거도 와 어디 듣고요 달리티지 속이는 미게 연구 총
알단데 파타 아쿠는 이게 센자바차데
센자바 링데지를 까까거다 다 디서도 까야지 링데지 건 렌자디 카가 주는 때지 연구서야 무슨
So Geshe kind of gave you the summary statement in the beginning. Now we go back to the text on page 171, where the debate is laid out there. So as we said, Baba Viveka, this great Indian master, he accepts what we call partless particles and externally existent objects or particles. Yeah. And so his position is that when these externally existent partless particles come together in the form of an aggregation of a mass, then it could give rise to or generate different perceptions, such as a vase, right, generating visual perception of the vase, and so on. Yeah. And so the Chitamatrins, mind-only school, have issue with that, okay, because they don't accept partless particles and externally existent objects. And so they are debating with that, So that is not a feasible position according to Chitamatrins, mind-only school. So they ask these two questions. And our visual perception does not perceive those partless particles which constitute a vase, for example, because those partless particles are very minute, right? Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, one logic being used that your position is not feasible because there is no such thing as partless particles, because those partless particles do not, right, appear to or are not perceived by our perceptions. Okay. Number two, but you say that an aggregation of these partless particles, give rise to, for example, visual consciousness, apprehending a vase, and that exists substantially. And Chitamatrins have issue with that. They say there is no such thing as substantially existent, objects. Why? Because there is no such thing as. The reason given is there are no such thing as what we call self-sufficient, substantially existent reality. The Tibetan phrase is, rangja tube zeyo. Rangja means self-sufficient, and zeyo means substantially existent reality or phenomena. Okay, and so according to Chitamatrins, that there are no such what called phenomena that are substantially existent. Okay, so that's how now the debate goes between Chitamatrins and the Baba Viveka, who represents the other side.
제가 나와 있는 언시kin 다들 튕겨들어와. 이제 간제 링덴제게 있는 번 속의 숭지미 힘이 괜시 다들 던지니 힘이 괜시하고와. 심장벽에 있는 바자세도 쇼에서 권이 되면 캐려고 미게 유샤고 말와. 유샤고와. 어디 지다티 다티 렌 도금 바왈리스 링데 도금 바왈리. 다 마사 부타라 바식바 엉부이 멤버 도는 트발로 드바 인시 송네 치멜리데 양 게데 릭지베 뉴트라 뉴바소스 초즈 셰네 데니 유 마이데 제메베 셰리 셰셰베 땡지 마시네 니 땡지 헨라 모더베니데 강데데 릭지베 타라 지무 셴데 셴 텔라 페다베 조와데 제비 디 유무연라 디시네 뉴트라 뉴트라 뉴버 나메 남바 젠기 론조아인데 릭지베 타라 드 사바니레 폼발라소바 양 제소 드 제소 예데 타르베케노스 티타티 렌 쇼노이네 Then the deutera say the Karsi Karsa. This said what Karsa. Some of the deutera on you might the deutera on you might the Mena share say in deutera Masab Negap, Sida Pano Tord David Negap Jorova.
No.
This is a national Drogo Marisi, thinking on you killing Marisira.
I don't know.
The Pumbas to Dodo shots and get the desert, you know. In the Sangi, you know, you might this baby, and the ya any this water. That took me to sort. Link the only you killing grow.
I don't
Same yourself with Dodo killing grow.
know.
Said the Masa Negatin and nature in the killing with teacher dog, but the only you sickness.
I don't know.
Sa Sangeti and only you may be this baby, in teacher that took me to get the killing was. This is only genes.
So according to Baba Viveka, when partless particles aggregate, come into a mass form, such as a vase, okay, and then that vase becomes an objective condition that gives rise to visual perception apprehending the vase. So there's a cause and effect relationship in some sense, right? Chitta Martins have issue with that. They say no, there isn't such thing as partless particles coming together and forming a mass, mass, and that cannot be the objective condition because according to Chitta Martins, as we said, everything is a mental projection from our imprints. So when we see a vase, that vase cannot be the objective condition for the perception. It exists together with, the perception. There is no cause and effect relationship here because it's a projection of your own mind. You're projecting it and you're seeing it yourself. So now the Baba Vivekas, respond to the Chitta Martin's position. They said, if you're asking me whether I agree that these partless particles, that are scattered, right, everywhere, whether they are the objective condition for perception, visual consciousness, and I say no, So I don't agree with that, So that's not my position, because partless particles, they can be scattered, right, before they come together. But if you ask me whether the aggregation of those partless particles is the objective condition for a perception, then I say yes. And then your reason is, well, there is no such thing as substantially existent reality. I don't agree with your reason because my position is there are substantially existent reality. So your reason does not apply to me. So that's the Baba Viveka responding to Chitta Martin's argument.
The the Saudi da Dubai show, but Hina to in Dubai is Saudi like Hina Gomba, no in the Shin so there was Doji Ray Marva, or this Dubai is this your Marisio. The Dodo Red sang it was on the Zesi or this Linde Kale and the Jillian Gora.
Again, they call up in a Shina Pesha and again. Shina not Korancho, not this Zesi, but Shin don't read it just Melo.
Hina's lamna. And pick up Hinas the Ganga Doji Ray Mara, Pali didn't dinner dam the Mavachi Kaka de Mare. She don't develop Zes your Marisio. The Pumbaka compares on the Doji Ray Tarava. No, this in Sak Dusi.
According to the Baba Viveka's, these partless particles can, form a mass, come together, sort of in an integrated form, just like we are looking at that pillar. So that pillar is a representation or a collection of many partless particles. They have come together in a very sort of a synthetic form, and that they accept as substantially existent. But, for example, in the case of, I don't know how it works in English expression, that's why I was checking with Geshe. When we think of a forest in the Tibetan called Nak, according to them, you see, there are so many trees in the forest, but they have not come together in the form of an aggregation. So they don't call that substantially existent aggregation. But something like a vase, a pot, something like a pillar, they said that's what we call, substantially existent reality.
Oh, dear Karza, Tarahino, Kongi Chir, Tarab Zejang, Zegin David Dani, Dini ti je ni du ngoman de ba ta dibe dan ji phamba la so ba la yin la je ni de ba shi ne ma zhe be no shi du cha ra sak be re re ni an shi ji ge dang te yang me je yu di xie ba dang du cha we tar tu ba yang xie ba na yi si du cha me dang xa mi mi gen di xie do ling den jie ta te re du ka re na ka nga zun zui la ka sa dami cha zi ge sa ja ro du cha mo ka ze na te le ya jung ju du xie da jung ju du xie zi ge mang di ba ya ma da ta cha shu ka zi sung jung yin na ro我觉得这要的是。所以第一个是，第这你都我们都要得是，第这要他就查到的，那这要的话是，所以第那些，那上边那个了，那澎湃的就是上头那个高是多多的，第一，那第一的这是要的是，是吧？这是不是？可是，把些呢，马上你都是的讲了，马上那个了。du thor denge ji onji yudu me ji ta phandam le du me thong ya me de yo ma re o tige de in te onji nang ma onji me gin shi ma ba o to do do ga me thong to ya da om jo ko to ya ganga me gin shi ro ba ti sha de es ro ba kar sa chba ji du chara sa be re re ne onji yo dang de ya ze su yo ba xie ba dang du cha ya tar to ba xie ba na du sha me gin shi de da sa be ne ga so这是我的，你多多的没见阿拉想，你操办的，你全部人没见下个人是我。
那不然
你下个可是你全部人怕这些，你多多下要么吧？就这个你全部刚刚去多的多多下是吧？但你这个人怕这些呢，多多下要么是吧？现在个多多下的，我一同样这个你这个人你要可。没同样见钱的用是吧？现在你多多那个农路你全部刚刚没见因是吧？
Ale, because and you some already ne can J jig
do.
So we are in the middle of page 171, where the sentence begins. It is the nature of a minute particle to be an aggregation of eight substances and etc. So the explanation given on that is according to Baba Viveka, except the partless particles, just like in the Vasubandhu's Treasury of Knowledge, Abhidhamma Kosha, where they said that even the smallest particle, we call it the minute particle, it consists of 8 elements. It's translated in your book as 8 substances. Yeah, the 8 elements are 4 basic elements and the 4 elemental products. So every little particle consists of those 8 elements. Okay, and so when such elements come together in the form of a mass, then we have visible forms. Okay, and so in the case of a vase or a pot, it is an aggregation of many partless particles. And the vase is an objective condition that gives rise to our eye consciousness or visual consciousness apprehending the vase. Okay, so that's their position, Baba Viveka. But the extension of that thinking, Baba Viveka says that every particle that has constituted the vase is also objective condition of that perception, visual perception. Are you with me? Because they said, like, if we are going to dismantle the vase, right, take every particle out, he said, then there is no vase, there is no object condition. The fact that every little particle has contributed and come together and clung together and formed this vase means that every particle is an objective condition for the visual perception. So that's the Baba Viveka's position.
가지 차던
아,
그
되네,
너
세이비도.
라도 봐.
No,
어디
lado.
라도 봐.
No.
어쨌든 제가 뒤쳐 유지 진이 받쳐야 매번 셔 말해.
No, no, lado.
라
No.
되네 신 라도 그러와.
Lado.
뒤에서 타면 뭐
Ah,
샹이
no, so. So the Baba Viveka's, the understanding of Pada's particle is very different from, Pada's particles, talked about in the non-Buddhist number of traditions or the schools of thought. Yeah, according to Baba Viveka, a Pada's particle, does not mean a particle doesn't have the aspect of impermanence or the aspect of emptiness like that. Okay, what it really means is, if we are going to dissect a particle into pieces, okay, we go to the extent, that we cannot divide it any more further. If you do divide it, then it becomes imperceptible. Are you with me? We can mentally say that, right? Okay, I'm going to dissect that particle into pieces, and I reach this last point. If I divide it further, then the particle itself disappears. Now I cannot, it becomes imperceptible. So that is what he called partless particle. Okay? So he said such a particle can come into aggregation or form a mass, and then all these visible forms and then the audible sounds, they come into existence.
어디 뒤참이 미게 해도 세서 뒤참이 미게 해서야 돼. 싹배 내가 그다 노로티는 뒤참이 간가?
No.
이는 미게 있어 뭐
No.
난갈 어디 유도 좀 참되었대 말잖아. 어디
No. So what they're saying is, in the case of a vase, not only the vase itself is an objective condition giving rise to the visual perception of the vase, but every partless particle in that vase is also objective condition. Now that is a different as saying all the scattered particles out there in the universe are objective conditions for perception. That Baba Viveka doesn't accept. He said, you know what? There are all the scattered particles in the universe. I'm not saying these are the objective conditions for perception. I'm saying when these particles come together in a clunky form, right? Not only that clung, the mass is your objective condition, but every little particle that constitutes it is your objective condition for the perception. Okay, so that's a big difference there.
어디 단디 꾸진 장시에 라르시모 룽동 섬는지스. 히 다시모 이스타 찡디레 다다 링디지 디참이 해고 말서 꾸진 장시에 라르시모 세고 효도 타타도 뭐 효 디참이 해도 세도.
So this is also a very subtle matter where sometimes the great masters, they have a lot of disagreements and discussions between one of the great masters called Kunjin Jamyang Sheba, the great Jamyang Sheba. His position, he says that he thinks that Baba Viveka does not, accept partless particles. This does not, that's right, because Baba Viveka does accept partless particles, but according to him, he thinks does not accept. So that's why sometimes, there are other authors, they have a debate with Kunjin. How can you say that, So it's a very kind of a subtle matter here.
어디 샤미 미지세 디피지 되게 다 싫어왜 너다나 이 샤미 비지 찍부세야지 와. 그래 미지다 되 고면로. 근데 담에만 되게 해쇼라고 내가 잡도.
So Geshe-la's understanding is, Kunjin Jamyang Shepa's, position is probably premised on the thing that Baba Viveka does not accept the kind of partless particles that are theorized and accepted in other non-Buddhist schools, such as independent partless particles. So maybe that's why he thinks, that's not what the Baba Viveka is talking about.
뒤에 엄부시바 신앙 추주 그래서 추주스 ngārhewa 남지 말레바 마주와 해je 타니도 너데바도 틈비 미긴해와 이노스 어디 다 너데집에 엄마를 정집에 세야지 뒤참이天주하게 이니 시동도 해와디 지는 너데집에 세워 말아 시도 링데젤이야 너데집에 엄마 세워가 그래서는 시동 조당데 야 너데바 찍바산 참이 야산 샤고라 어디서 너데집에 엄마를 세워라 어디 너도 뭐 샤워서 그래서 다티도 링데제들 가지 먼저 태기 주기 말리 어이 강가데 마주 시바이 나와다 접수었다 먼저 다 직대랑은 그 통하데 너나 요래서 그러다 찍고 찍경이다 어디 나와나 히트가 누구라 딱 그런 거만 나와시다 트기도 지야요 말아
맞아요. 저는 겐 텐주베 시대 shedan da kasa di lingden chidin shedan yu da donda kha cha go
도다 가가죠. 대조 그 뉴타랍지라 계좌 말아. 거기 매기 속 통고 봐. 속된 미히견 지데 탄이가 자대요. 속이 속달 니지기라. 다가는 셔거서. 뭐 이거 가는 정도 제주시고 말아.
So Baba Viveka's position on existence of particles is really similar to that of Sautantika's position on particles particles. Okay, in the Buddhist schools of thought, we have Vaibhasika, Sautantika, Siddhamartins, and Madhyamikans. Then each has different sub-schools, right? So the Vaibhasika's explanation of particles particle, it is parallel to or similar to Sautantika's position particles particles. Now, Prasangika Madhyamikans also accept external objects, but then their understanding is different than the Baba Viveka's externally existent objects. Prasangikas accept external phenomena just like the ordinary people say. There are external things, and that's all there is. They don't say that, oh, those external objects have come together through the aggregation of partless particles. Prasangikas don't talk about that. So according to Baba Viveka, except for our perceptions, consciousnesses which are influenced by causes of error, temporary causes of error of the conditions, then the things exist just the way they appear to our perceptions. Now, for example, in the case of White Mountain, due to some kind of visual impairment or something, we see as a blue. Now that Baba Viveka would understand. No, now that is not what we call that is a mistaken consciousness, right? Because it's a white snow appearing as a blue, under some error conditions. But accepting those, like we have perceptions, just like seeing one moon as double moon vision and kind of thing. So that is all mistaken. Baba Viveka accept that. Accepting those perceptions which are influenced by temporary causes of error, our ordinary perceptions perceive the things just the way they appear to exist. So therefore, that is a big difference between Baba Viveka and Prasangika Madhyamikan positions.
중대래 가지네 중대래는 가지게 너대와는 로 건히 돈 담으면 되니 어머만 군조도 되듯이 해매바 건 임바테니 오메 땡지기 데코는 영어만 코네르메와 있는 셰셔와 셰와셔 양 간다 시라도 뭐는 건 돈담바메바 데 어머만 군조도 이노시 냠도 semba teta ke jang tenji din yong so ma shi ba khona yin den de dan jig den de be shue na nin jig den be shue de song ba me ri be she de lo ni de to mo yin ba wo xie ke wa na yin ya ba shou xie song be de de da kang ji ka ji ta de ka ji de da di xiao wo da ling dian ji da xiao wo yong de song da ji na ro ba do de wa na ji en ka sa dong de me wa ka ba de o mo gun zong de se de ji xiao da ka sa du sha me da ba xiao da ngô rồi mà đó thì bây giờ ngô nó thằng ta phải bị chào rồi mà ở đây cái mà ông mà cái工作一下thì一下thì ông们得就得先过嘛这些当然现在这个其他的嘛呢就你看同他们没问题我们那工作一下他我们得就先过嘛这是他都对下面那想的其他嘛用对下面同的嘛意思说就当到的吧看看了当这呢，这个把开始这是用给的，同的嘛，我们同的嘛，同时效果嘛样。其他嘛，澎湃大去的这个工作的嘛效果是吧？到的我们同的嘛强势是吧？现在看到这个把这讲的，我们工作运动些，到的话的，其他嘛没被对下面的，就是说，我们工作运行给这个我们做给的，我们得就我们厂商。고벌들로 공부 약부 해요 말이죠. 이 맛이야 그래서는 고벌들로 로라 가르쳐 동원다 버서 지어요 말봐. 지어면한테 엄마 버셔야 돼. 근데 도데벨로 그 뒤샤미다 뒤샤미 동원다 버서 뒤샤미에서 매다다 동원다 버 인사 뭐 뒤샤미 매야 인자 이네 거 가르쳐 돈 가르쳐 군조도 샤도 뭐라 군조도 있는 요거로 와. 그러 도데벨 동동시에 엄마 군조 인사야 돼. 뒤샤미도 하러 와. 어때 다 엄마 탱교로서는 되어 말이야. 매자 엄마 땡주 되거든 신고 말이야. 다 고물도 공부 말이야. 고물도 뒤참여야 말이야. 군도 대바래 말이야.
No, no.
어디 다
Kendana 나는 겐 도데베기 뒤섬에 겐 던담데 바치단데다 체라마베 뒤섬에 던담데 바치다
지도 가가리야.
켈람 바치 바체
걔를 맞지 마세.
데셰드 가
대제가 너도 뭐wen 돈도 왜 찾으라.
라,
귤게 받아 돈도 대 맞지 마셔 그러.
라데
지다 뭐 양대셔 그러고 가자 강원 셋 러이시 셋는 텔레비전 범지도 그 예데 돈도에시를 세디 러이 쉬기 좀 받아 러이 쉬기 셋나 런지 러문도 와디 돈도 대 마세. 된도라디 군도 대 마셔 그러.
라데
세다다 분바다 추도서 군도 대 마이스 그래. 분바다 바 추도고 카고 가시는 범지미기 매버래로 말해. 레로로. 어디서 강원 좀 러이시 셋는 텔레비전 와세디 군도 대 마셔 그러.
no
어디 다 뒤참에 듣고 다들 제다 다고 세야 용어라 다가나 네가 란사 디그러 시도고 동대 보셔 그래
no
그 샤당 주제 가가리다 제가 지버라
no suge so now Geshe is giving explanation on the big quote at the bottom of page 171 from Chandrakirti's explanation of the middle way commentary Madhyamik Avatar. So it's stated here, some say that the Madhyamikas accept in conventional terms exactly what the Sautrantika advocates ultimately. Okay? So in other words, what the Sautrantikas accept as existing ultimately, as ultimate reality, they say that Madhyamikans accept that as conventional reality. Okay? And the Chandrakirtis explains that, you got it wrong. You know, you're speaking out of ignorance. You didn't understand the Nagarjuna's philosophy here. Because according to Sautrantikas, functional things are regarded as ultimate reality. Okay? Functional things are regarded as ultimate reality. So therefore they say that partless particle is a functional thing, okay, which is an ultimate reality in Sautrantika school of thought. And they say that, so that should be conventional reality according to the Madhyamikans, okay, some scholars say. And Chandrakirti say, you got it wrong. Okay, there. Now, the next one it says, so others say that there are those who think that Madhyamikas accept in conventional terms what the Vaibhasikas advocate ultimately. Kind of similar parallel statement. Again, Chandrakirti said, you got it wrong too here. Yeah, and so that is, again, the example we can use is the same thing, partless particle. Sautrantikas accept partless particles, Vaibhasikas accept particles. Okay, Sautrantikas accept partless particles as ultimate reality, and so do the Vaibhasikas. But their explanation is different. They both accept that as ultimate reality, but their explanation for why that's ultimate reality is very different. Okay, and so according to Vaibhasikas, a partless particle is ultimate reality because ultimate reality is defined as that thing, which cannot be destroyed literally by hammer or whatever things you use, either by some tools or cannot be completely eliminated by our thought processes. Okay, so anything that is of that nature is considered as ultimate reality. So the partless particle is their example. They said partless particle exists. You cannot destroy it anymore by any kind of tools, and you cannot even mentally eliminate it. Okay, so therefore that kind of reality we accept as ultimate reality. Whereas a vase is a conventional reality for the Vaibhasikas. Why? Because it is a phenomenon, once it's either destroyed by whatever means or eliminated by our thought processes, then that phenomenon cannot exist anymore. Like, for example, a vase can be broken into pieces. Now you can't perceive a vase because it's gone, isn't it? Okay? And so that's how the definitions, the explanations given for what is ultimate reality, what is conventional reality, and different schools of thought, could be different. Okay? I know, we are dealing with heavy-duty things here. I guess you asked for it.
네가 지대님이 쉬어남니 가서 쉬어남니 지대비 쉬어도 통과 메리비 쉬어도 로는 통모 뭐해 봐. 개개와나 인가와 셔 계속 배서 쉬어도디 但是他让就面积领地就面积刚刚的，那让谁是吧？当中是用个些大的是，
No.
是吧？
No.
现在咱那的天就路的了，那他妈的是，别我不是说别。开发西到一点飞呀的，现在这是土木忙一把的是，
No.
现在的土木忙一把的，但开发做好过些我这时候，但让就把它天就被开发以后好过过这是，
No.
我这是我说，
No.
我当然这送给他们噻的。
So on the back of page 172, right on the top, it says, so basically Chantakya is saying that if you are wise and learned, you better understand the distinction between Pasangika Madhyamikan's position and Sevatantaka Madhyamikan's and school below. There is a big difference. Sevatantaka Madhyamikan's is one of the sub-schools of Madhyamika. It's high in the terms of philosophical standpoint, but it accepts, just like other schools below it, that things exist objectively, from their own characteristics. That's why they said, we see the things as they appear to us. Whereas Pasangika say, no, that cannot be, you see. Things appear to us in one way and they exist in another way. There is a disparity. Okay? So therefore, if you claim yourself to be wise and learned, and then you kind of think, okay, they're pretty much saying the same thing using different words, you got it wrong. You got to understand the distinction between their positions. So that's pretty much the message on the top of page 172.
对吧？他土木有特别重新说。 他也都要没写到，从这里他对下面写，真正被写完你的话，他对下面的送啊的写了吧，真正写完的，那像真把的写，他第一个要嘛吧，对下面这个写要嘛吧，他没有写，他写下面这话来就这样那个到成为了吧，写这吧，当然让个，对吧？咱们这对他的开朗吧，没有说写对下面。 对下面开门了，送说这里的，现在这个考试了呀，那这现在吧是现代是吧？现在是大过你下面我那上的开两个，但是说，我查查你们个，这但那让这做给你对查到下面的开了那这个嘛的是，这是我是吧？这对查到开了，为什么是现对下面开门了送说是？这些他对吧？第二东东的对吧？那我们工作的。 工作的开门呢，把呢下面拉上把我把了下一，第一的不是看的，我们工作的开门了，我当把门的是这的，觉得，可是啊，到的吧的，因其他嘛，因同的对这刚刚我们不是开了个嘛的是的嘛的是吧？他这边到的碰把的，那个就搞完之后，这个同他们对是吧？ 엄마 태유하게 범박가와 캐는 거라. 제가 캐는데 네 참이 어디에 지금 뭐 이제 저서 동서번 되지 가고 엄마 군소 캐빌레 쓰고 말했어. 범박가와 너 대비 동동이 있어. 엄마 군소 있어 그러와. 어디 쓰고 다 뒤쳐봐. 들이야 네 참이 든지베 시바 뭐 강가 해야 합니다.
So according to Sevatantaka Madhyamikan's and schools below, imputed phenomena should be findable. Okay, things exist objectively, and if we look for them, we should be able to find them. Okay, so therefore they said that partless particles do exist, and through the aggregation of these partless particles, visible forms exist, which could give rise to visual perceptions. Okay. But according to Pasangika Madhyamikans, such things don't exist. In the first place, there are no partless particles. So if partless particles don't exist, there cannot be an aggregation of partless particles becoming a visible form and giving rise to perception. So both sides, object and subject, don't exist for the Pasangika Madhyamikan school of thought. Then on the page of 172, there is a quote from Chandrakirti's 400 stanzas on the middle way, Chetuk Shedak, which reads, "It is not right for Buddhist schools to assert substantially existent minute particles as do the Vaisheshikas. Vaisheshikas are non-Buddhist schools. Okay? So this explanation is really, no Buddhist schools of thought should accept the kind of partless particles that are accepted in the non-Buddhist schools. They're considered independent partless particles. So according to Chandrakirti's 400 stanzas, no Buddhist should accept that kind of partless particles, Okay. Then following that, another thing is, it is not that Madhyamikans refute everything that, for example, Southern Tikas and Baba Viveka accept as ultimate reality. That's not the case, because according to Southern Tikas, ultimate reality is the same as functional things, isn't it? So a vase is a functional thing, so is a pillar. So these things are ultimate reality for Southern Tikas, but Madhyamikans accept they exist. But for Madhyamikans, these are conventional realities. These are not ultimate reality. Okay? But when the Southern Tikas say that the partless particles is ultimate reality, then Madhyamikans say, give me a break. We don't agree with that one. Okay?
Sukja la soba, teta ki deba dewa, oba kunzo dewa, de senji de kaya dewa. Sukja la soba, ninde de any karsa, de tongtama dewa ina, de oma de kunzo dewa dewa, tizo kunzo tongtama dewa ganga oma any kunzo dewa chakma res. Dewa, dewa. Hijabe dewa le ombu du charab sobe. 갑지 레레네 엉희기 유르드어바 까징 엉본 남자 뉴차르바다 디니데 신주 마드바 데달라 텐데 딱바 남시제 텐이라 대히데 유남데 텐데 딱베 딱유다 엉희유도 송신 히바는 우선 딱바도 유는 우선 생이바 셰베 로본링딘 지니지 시동기 치료기 동시에만 다양 엉버드 유남 조주 menjawa nangos 다들 걸사 얘도서 히잡은 제발레라와 엉부디 차라서가 이래레 엉히 유르드바 가시다 링디지게 엉부디서 에니 디스 엉부디 샤미시 엔디 주 엉부레 도도레네 에니 엉히 엉부디 엉히 주시로와 어디시 지도다 디 히잡 제가서 디 엉부디 차라부터 가이버와 엉부디 차라 아니 엉히 한데 제게레세나 에니 엉부도 유초온디서는 엉히 정글 뭐 이제 근데 땅동센디 요거마 그래서 그래봐 유비게 속초와다 에니 그래서 미게드 비게 속초와다 낙제 대마다게 소소는 에니 거 미기죠 그러와 뭐 이제 디절이야 디샤메사 니리 미게 고마레스 더다데서 가지 세다 히바 가데 저거세는 히바가가 유일된 히바 좋아다 히바든 유조가 펜지 또좀 좋고 그래서 유요바든 히바 좋 히바 요바든 유요거로 어디 시작 그랬어요.
So Geshe is giving explanation on the passage in the middle of page 172. The passage begins in the commentary on the 400 stanzas by Chandrakirti and so on. Okay, and the explanation given here is. Although Baba Viveka accept that there are partless particles, and these partless particles could come together in the form of aggregate, and then it can give rise to visible forms, and that could give rise to perceptions. But Chandrakirti refutes that. Chandrakirti says that there are no partless particles, and partless particle cannot be an objective condition giving rise to visual perception, even coming together as in the form of aggregate. And then we could ask the Chandrakirti or the Pasangikas, then how do the visual perceptions arise? According to your thinking, right? We could say that. And Chandrakirti says, for us, the way these different perceptions arise is when the respective objects, they come together with their respective perceptions, thus it gives rise to. For example, say if there is a visible form, okay, and then your eye faculty, sensory faculty is intact, it's not messed up, okay, and then there is what we call immediately preceding condition. It is a technical term, okay. Then coming together of all these three conditions can give rise to visual consciousness apprehending a form. Okay, it's as simple as that. You don't have to go into deeper analysis that the Baba Viveka is doing. He said, how can a visible form become objective condition for perception? They say, we have to look at, there are partless particles. You can find them, you can analyze them. They come together, that's all, you're going, in a very kind of an unnecessary direction and analysis. You don't have to do that. You can simply say, a visible form appears, and then there is the what called intact eye sense faculty. There is the immediately preceding condition. When these three conditions together, they arise a visual consciousness. Okay, that's how we explain it according to Chandrakirti school. Okay, and so Chandrakirtis and Prasankika Madhyamikans, they very much assert the idea of relativity. How we accept things exist in relation to each other. Okay, we assert, that the subject exists because object exists. Object exists because of the subject exists. Are you with me? An object and subject, objective conditions of the object and their subjective perceptions are, very much related to each other. If one doesn't exist, the other can't exist. We only know there is a visual consciousness apprehending a vase because a vase exists, right? And how do we know that a vase exists? Because there is a visual consciousness apprehending a vase, right? So they, exist in that kind of a relativity, a sphere of reality, if you will. And that's how Madhyamikans accept how subject and object, they are relatively related to each other, connected.
the trouble here by Inos, did it that Ganji, Lindy, Pumzi, the Dandy is no other troubles over. But then, does in the no other trouble, wrong thing to a Nango, the wrong thing to another, wrong thing to a Yamarva. Maybe no. Lobun de Tiny Tayan, did that trouble here by Inos, did it that Ganji, Tanya to a Ganji. Shivalia, Suzo, no other tiny to your mess or that country. That Thomas was a part of no other tiny to your may hear Riva. Chuba here is Kaji, any Mikito Ganga, any Dematruana, the tree she will rock us that wrong to sing it was in the yard. He goes wrong. This is any tree she was that, or this she was. Did that Shibanam tiny to Sudala so be you number job with Several never made this. That only true in the court when the Suzy making so similar to Dandy, that similar to a shadow more of the shadow race. Till true, but till someone get it, take you a change your risk.
So Geshe has given explanation on the last paragraph on page 172. Yeah. And the point that's being made here is this, that according to Baba Viveka, things exist objectively or by way of their own characteristics. And that's how things appear to exist for our perceptions. And that's how things really exist. So, our perceptions are not mistaken with regard to that. So that's the Baba Viveka and his schools of thought, position. Okay, but according to Chandrakirti and Prasankika Madhyamikans, things do not exist the way they appear to us. Things appear to us as existing objectively, but they don't exist that way. So therefore, our perceptions are mistaken perceptions because they appear to us in one way and they exist in different way. Okay, that's perception. Okay. But that being said, as I made this point some other days, according to Prasangikas, that we as ordinary people still could have valid perceptions. Okay. Our ordinary perceptions are all influenced by, that grasping at what we call intrinsic existence or objective existence. But that does not mean that we, the ordinary people, cannot have valid perceptions. Because we have valid perceptions of visible forms, we have valid hearing or perceptions of sounds, okay, so we do have that. So it is the only Prasankika Madhyamikans who are able to make that assertion. Our perceptions at one level are mistaken, but at another level it could also be valid. Okay.
시베 리베 시베 로바 인지 타니베 쳔메 테 문조베 타니베 히발 때디 추와 많이 노스 그래서 다가지 어히 나와다 그 숭지미기 나와도 그 맞아 최신 동계도 먼저 돈이 하 먹게 저거 있는 거 최신 뭐 하고 말했어 그러봐 그 나와도 맞아 어디 가서 돈이 레디 그러봐 그래서 그 돈이 레디도 그 돈이 맞도 그 나와도 맞아 하고 말봐 그래서 먼저 지대랑가 돈이 맞도 타니베 쳔메 거 최신 뭐 하고 말했어 그 나와도 요 삼디고 그랬어 그래서 그러봐 다와니나 당 송연라서 네 희와는 나다 유돈 다와니의 시신라서 메 타니베 쳔마 니미베 리베 희와 데미드 저베 대다다 가만남 양다도 로베 군족지 나바샤야 태바이노스 데다 가르사 단도 속도 나와도 저와다 다와니나 희와 어디서들이야 채바데 다와니나 희와데 거 좀바 최신 뭐 지대랑가 가도 하고 가고 그러와 또 지금부터 하고 말이지 세대 먹어서 될이야 아니 지대를 때에 아니 수고도 양다 군조서 하고 그러와 나와니나다 송이 제시 뭐도 어디가 로베 군조 하고 그러와 어디 지대 때는 하고다 지대에는 송이한테 제시 말해서 그러와 나와니 용을 나와지 못 용을 나고 그러와 다 속나와다 저래서 뭐이도 속나와다 저 말씀이 신이 요 말아 진짜 지대 랑가 그런 zuba이미 샤샤고다 저도서
다와니나다 게 시시송이 나무도 로베 군저로 좀 베긴
어디 로베 군저로
다다 수게 나무도 맞도 버디 양다
지대 일어도 양다 군저 샤고 양다 군저 태조로 원해신데 양다 봤다 군저 개고서 어디 지대 거로 저서 그 양다 봐 탄이 시고라 어디 지대 일때 샤 있으기도 되래 제가 뒷남샤디 양로 되는 저는 태그레스 된 지대 일때 샤고 요스테서 왔다 가지
Okay, I'm going to see what terms they have used here. Okay, I'm trying to find the terms used in this translation on the page intrinsic.
tinno chubajibu yude na da yarang sin chubase tini yidane
단다겐 디 가자 디 경 차변알이야 경 양다 공조도 로버 공조기 디 탄이 걸 세용 것도 여기
사이 세도 대도서 그래서 주변에 대다다 나만나라 양다도 로버 공조 옛날에야 태바이노스
그래서
디 마스에르다다 단디 되게 히타 티에제데 말에 되는 데말 가로 이그링이즈 로서 되는 힘을 두고도
그래서 오케이
거기 로드 추바이나 इन को छमे ठो छो रेस
No.
ता नसी के इन लोगबा यांगला तो शाजी दे ये तो शा छो रेस
No.
मैं ये ने थिंक यू ता ने सा या न ये तिरे मेवा खेले मर से होता गजे
Okay, so anyway, it doesn't matter if I found the term or not. I got the point that's being explained. According to Prasangika Madhyamikans, in this case represented by Chandrakirti, although things appear to our ordinary perceptions as existing objectively, they don't exist in that way. But we don't realize that disparity. Okay, people, those of us who have not realized emptiness, right? We don't know that. Okay, things appear to us objectively, characteristically, but they don't exist in that way. Okay, whereas there are certain perceptions we know it is a false, deceptive perceptions. For example, when we have a double vision of a moon, right? If a moon started to appear 2 or 3 to you, then we all know, even as ordinary people, there's only one moon. So if you are seeing 2 moons or 2 plus, then your perception is what we call mistaken perception, or that is the term I was trying to look is called Lokpe Phuntsok. The Tibetan word Phuntsok is translated as deceptive, falsity, mistaken, okay, things like that. And that ordinary people also understand that there are no 2 moons. Or take another example. When we look when our face is reflected in the water or in the mirror, okay, that reflection appears as real face, but we all know it is not our real face. Okay? So that kind of a disparity, how something appears as being real, but it's not the real thing, at that level, we as ordinary people understand that. We don't need explanation about that. Okay? But that's not the same as, when we say that things appear to us as objectively existent, but they don't exist in that way. Now we, the ordinary people, right, unless it's explained to us or unless we have realized emptiness, we don't know that kind of a disparity between appearance and reality. So that kind of disparity between appearance and reality in the Tibetan Tamil is called Yangdap Phuntsok. It is a Phuntsok translated as deceptive, but it's a correct kind of a, how should I say? It's very hard to even translate. Yangda in the sense of correct, perfect, and Phuntsok often we translate as conventionality, deceptive truth, falsity. Now you see the poor translator grappling with this issue here. And I don't know how other translators solved it. Maybe they should give me a call. So anyway, so you get the sense, yeah.
Kete rigbe shiba da tanibe tsemal teni chubatabe keba yudu shokyang shishi la sobar nawe thong me bata rang singi di nawe thong ya me la tere da tanda melo nagi shishi sunye di ene gunzo tobala zumba tobala ene tanibe tsemarang to shugur di rikil tuyo ma res ta pumba la sawa di ene pige karsa dete karsa Phunzi miki cheba tokbal rigbe hibal doin tokbo kores, irwa? Tingi cheba yordi, ina thonda cheba karesana, ene meho nangi cheshi sungye, cheshi inba do yomar ma yidi, kanchi sungye nanyaji yorwa? Nanyaji yorwa, ten nangi, ene tanda sungzi miki ra sok nangadar me na, yang kola nangya yang piki karsa, cheshi sungye ma yinja, cheshi nangwa jo toba nangi, sok rang singi baru na sungzi mikil sok nangya da tokya kanga shaado ures, meo nang shihi sungye nangya yorwa.
Narwa.
Sungye di shihi kono marwa. Dirwa. Daga nangi sok di ya rang singi zhuwa mara di sungzi mikil nangya do yaw mara di shen na meo nang shengyen sungye shaya yuwa na sungzi mikil sok nangya yorwa. Nangya yorwa song zhuwa to ure lawa. Sok rang singi zhuwa mendo song zhuwa to ure.
In the case of the two examples we gave, a moon appearing as two moons or reflection of face on the surface of the water or in the mirror, okay, we don't need really what we call rely upon rationalization or rationality and reason to understand that those appearances are not the realities. Okay, we see that looks like a face in the mirror, it looks like me, but we don't have to have kind of a rational analysis and reasoning to say, well, that's not your face. Okay, we just can conventionally understand it. Okay, but in the case of how things appear to our even visual perceptions as objectively existent, but they don't exist in that way, to be able to understand that kind of disparity, we have to rely upon what we call reasoning and reasoning and analysis. So that's the difference being made. So in the case of let's say, face in the mirror, there is the appearance of face, isn't it? That exists. We don't say that that appearance doesn't exist. It exists. What does not exist is what we see in the mirror as real face. That does not exist. And we know that. We don't need any rational analysis with that. Are you with me? Now, in the case of a vase or a pot appearing objectively existent to our visual perception, now we need, reasoning and rational analysis to understand that it does not exist in that way, okay? But that does not mean the pot or the vase does not exist, because there is also the appearance of a pot, and that is valid. And because we experience that, we know based upon that appearance of the pot, we say, hey, there is a pot, isn't it? So that appearance exists just like the appearance of a face in the mirror, okay? Boy, we are having a lot of fun. Actually, I am at least having a lot of fun here. Yeah.
Teacher Tedala, Tanya, Lord Rangawa, Teni, Chinjo Lomo, Chewa Mede, Yana, Rang Sing you to go tongue. She should know at Tati, Tony got Tanya to Mevandala, Su so down. su so dang sung yin so ni ga tan yi de yo ba da la jung de le den ni jung sung yin de zha chak sha la sa ba jung si jing ni zun yang ma ri ba den de ba na la ngom ba la so ba su rong sim da so su rong sim da so wa la so ba jung si jing ni den ba na de rong sim ni ma ri ba den de ba na la na ba tam ji de me na ngo ti che de da kang xi工作这样，怎么你工作一点吧没有？写我不来说吧，工作点吧，写我不来说吧，工作点吧做吧等，从业说工作点吧没做比，千万没得都写就呢，连接有，他得这下是吧？可是，第一些是他的。第千万的关于运用的没人听着啊，第一些，提到了他那边老ran高对你讲，请求老么了，千万没有的样子，是吧？他第一的呀，你所让心是吧？那点没的，所以些那点没的，关于个没法几把着啊。是的，关于那他那边才么的，关于的呀，你千万重要没多少事，最主要要什么？他那边才么老把到吧的，没到的千万想是吧？所那的么这不他那边才么到嘛的，是吧？有那些那的嘛，就是这个最终搞嘛是吧？我这几天让搞到的时候，第一千万要是吧？没有的，你那我那让生意这边我的学习那的，同你看他也没完渣了，对让生意这边等，生意生意这边你看没完他也渣的，所说等，所以说你看他也要完渣了，所他也得要完那一，所以说他也得要是吧？这中国都是是吧？渣了。用这来电的这个送烟的长下来时候，就是今天这样，没人办的吧？那了，我把那上的说，人生的错完了时候，就是今天点办那的，人心的没人办的吧？那把他就没那我第一次得到可惜工作这样，怎么你工作一点吧没有的些，我把那什么工作点不着吧的，送烟说工作点没着呗，千万没得些，就是连接有。这下，他这些下刚才，可以工作的就能工作忙的下就让用这嘞，他基本是这啥，所可能那的么着问着，送烟那的学业么着问着，他送烟送烟那也完了，所有也完，可以个刚刚这样的基本些，这基本这个呢。因第一了呀，今天工作点吧的，今天点吧忙是，千万小嘛，基本是样人的话是，这是我，但是吧，
现在创个出现过了不？
但这同住空中的精神的，他的么，现在工作点怎么工作点嘛那些，我们那工作点吧，做吧的，从业说工作点吧没些，千万没得的些，觉得连接，可就有些。他都冲个意思是吧？这天就就让人家得了这个，他人家送烟说人家可是啊，今天让搞今天工作点么做了，说的今天工作点么做，千万没得话他是老那时候是吧？说的今天的让他们做什么的工作这个嘛是吧？他因送烟的工作这个是吧？今天他也是工作这个是吧？准备这个是吧？但的工作现在都准备同时候，他看见，的千万没得。就第二，他也别希望那完这样，送烟了说完，今天别他也别希望准备到呗，今天工作一点吧没做了，我把那说吧呢，那准备人，这准备今天别希望空的时候没你呗，今天有工作点么做我娘呢，这到有第二那样，他也别怎么了对的，邻居贴外先的，有些人讲他也别希望对的，先就那么了。太不容易，第一次他的这一下，听说个他让有民间这个，因为有了呀，养老项目的有些人呢，养大工作比较下去，给这叫什么？
给个例子说那个让有民间，
让有民间给
有了，
老百工作下的有了么的，有些人养大工作比较的，有些人老百养嘛的，但听说个的，因为有些人老百工作效果是吧？他边的。 没有那个学习的老百工作完呢，一详细的那老天老百工作下的，看这有可能看这些呢，这边老的看都下过是吧？碰见没给的让大工作下，从现这边老的还是啥看这里老百工作下过是吧？有可能可以这个是有呢，老天老百工作下，有可能这个是有嘛嘞呢？有些的让大工作有让大工作这个是吧？但是不把让大工作有吧？我第七把的在想，我第他看见的。有些用老教下的，天教他们忙运势，我的感觉的这多样的这来下。但是其实看啥，今天最晚都第一个，开把的天教因的从业的，所个人让生意那的马着那所那要的从业学习的马着就从业那要的刚刚因他也的以外刚刚台湾因是都是吧。肉是吧？这种呢，这叫人今天你了，这工作的那边的开发这个问题我说呢，这嘛些问题呢，这这个也是是吧？哎呢，看啥？今天让个或者么多门都像你工作电话下单的第四个，从业就是说工作电话忙一弄是的这，今天让个给我呢电话忙一些么子，工作电话忙一那个么是吧？今天让个从业电话忙从业到那到要么是个，要么是个，知道工作管理呀。电话现在给老百工作下一吧，老百工作下的今天新闻都是老百工作下过是吧？碰把子弄的也是今天新闻都让大工作下过是吧？我这些都当，你有的今天教吧那些，你有件西巴那样，你有那些教头的噻，我他今天就这些，但
碰把可是那么的有时今天没事，但是搞点那么的个，可是让个生意这边那么的小个嘛，既然碰把可能那么的。
让生意做的巧，但是普遍那的做样大一些的，让生意做难搞了，这是个。我这个可是啥？普遍那的嘛，这把日本需，他以为需要多嘛的，日本都有拉上啊。我这些的养生意这边那的小个是吧？他的生意的那的些的，就当的让生意能做有这样，就当今天长寿个生意可是学习嘛的些个提做的小个是吧？生意学习嘛也不看，今天让个多多了，我这个是。
搞得了跟工作是同到国际的。工作过了，养大工作的，老婆工作的。
工作下的，就在工作现在这是话的，还是啥？工作在就在那个日系人主要找的，因为产业的也话找的，这工作这种什么的找的，他的平时产业的也话他找一个，我的什么找了，工作下的，是他这东西呢，工作的两百年给我是吧？这给我也是。刚才工作的话，工作的话嘛，是的，开始是呢，因为工作的话，当因为一万年给的时候，这给我们的，但是第四呀，开始是呢，今天可能个长寿了，因为工作人呢，看今天我200码的时候嘛，已经那样，工作的话嘛来个嘛的，是吧？没弄那些个生意都今天长寿那个200这个嘛是吧？我这么就是，要工作的话嘛也来个嘛，我就这个同的这类的吧。
So these are all very hardcore matters, and not an easy thing to chew and digest. But anyway, we're trying here. The reason I was asking is again the same. I don't think in this translation I saw the terms translated. I'm struggling with the Tibetan called Yangdao Kunzup and Lokwe Kunzup. I can translate my way, but then it's another thing. Because unless we have good terms for that, then we just get confused. It's not really working out in the translation. Anyway, the whole the thing debate about here is, the critic raised this issue. They said, why do you posit, Prasangikas, from the worldly perspective, there are two types of kunzop. That's the technical term, which is sometimes we translate as conventionality, sometimes we translate as false, and sometimes we can even translate it as obscuration, see? But in this particular case, the meaning is conventionality, okay? So from worldly perspective, you Prasangikas talk about there are two types of conventionality. One is lope kunzop, mistaken conventionality or incorrect conventionality. Let me work with that term, okay? And then there is the correct conventionality, okay? The correct conventionality, according to Prasangika, is, for example, when we talk about a vase, right? That is a correct conventionality. The incorrect conventionality is, as we apply to say, a reflection of a face in the mirror appearing as a face. Okay, so we are still sorting out those two things here. So why do you make a big fuss about that? A critic race, because you see they both seem to be similar in this respect, right? in the case of the face in the mirror, there is a reflection of the face. Okay? That face reflection appears as a real face, right? In the case of a vase, right, it appears as objectively existent. So there is that appearance, okay? And that both seem to be same. There is the appearance of the vase. There's the appearance of the face in the mirror. They're kind of parallel, okay? And the face in the mirror appears as a real face, and the vase, which exists objectively, appears as, as the reality. So they're both the same. So why you are making a fuss about, differentiating between two types of conventionality? You call it Phuntsok Phuntsok, correct conventionality, and Lokpe Phuntsok, incorrect conventionality. What you try to do that from worldly perspective. So now the Prasangika is responding to that, that critique, that, as we talked about before, in the case of a face in the mirror, worldly people, without resorting to rationality and rational analysis, understand that what you see in the mirror is just a reflection of your face. It appears as a real face, but it's not a real face. So you don't need, rational analysis with regard to that. But in the case of a vase appearing as objectively existent to our perception, worldly people don't realize it, and that's why really there's need for rationality and rational analysis to tell that a vase appears as objectively existent to your perception, but it doesn't exist that way. So those two things are really different from worldly perceptions in a point of view. And let me see. So that's why Prasangika says that really we need to differentiate, between conventionality, I should say. I shouldn't say conventional reality, because then that becomes conventional truth. Some vritti satya, got to be careful. The conventionality consists of those two levels, the correct and the incorrect. Okay. Well, hopefully you will give me next time a better terminology. So there are some who are learning Tibetan, so pitch and help me. Bring me correct English translations for Phuntsok Phuntsok, correct conventionality, and Lokpe Phuntsok, incorrect conventionality. That's how I translate it, but don't buy my translation. Yeah. No, it's okay. So we are going to stop there, and we would like to welcome your questions. Oh, first I need to note down the page number.